The ambulance sped down a rural road, its sirens piercing the quiet evening. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a golden retriever appeared, blocking the path. The dog stood firm, his posture tense, his eyes pleading as if trying to convey an urgent message. The driver hit the brakes, startled. The paramedics inside exchanged confused glances. One of them leaned out and tried to shoo the dog away, but the golden retriever didn't budge. He turned, looking toward the forest, then back at the ambulance, his movements deliberate and insistent. "What is he doing?" One paramedic muttered. "We don't have time for this." The other paramedic stepped out cautiously. "Wait, I think he wants us to follow him." The dog barked once, then started trotting toward the trees, pausing to make sure they were coming. His urgency was unmistakable. After a moment of hesitation, one of the paramedics grabbed their kit and followed, with the other reluctantly joining. The dog led them into the woods, weaving through the trees with precision. They hurried to keep up, their boots crunching on leaves and branches. The air was thick with tension, the only sound the occasional bark urging them onward. Minutes later, they came to a clearing. The scene before them made their hearts sink. A young boy was lying unconscious, his leg pinned under a heavy tree branch. His face was pale, and his chest rose and fell shallowly. The dog rushed to the boy's side, whining softly, licking his face as if willing him to wake up. The paramedics sprang into action. One checked his pulse while the other assessed the injury. "He's alive, but barely," one said, their voice tight. They worked quickly, removing the branch and stabilizing the boy. The dog stayed close, his eyes darting between the paramedics and the boy, as if he understood the gravity of the situation. Once they lifted the boy onto a stretcher, the dog followed closely as they made their way back to the ambulance. When they tried to load the stretcher, the dog attempted to climb in. "You can't come, boy," one of the paramedics said gently, pushing him back. But the dog whined loudly, pawing at the ambulance. After a moment's hesitation, one paramedic said, "Let him in. He's not going to leave him anyway." Inside the ambulance, the dog sat beside the boy, resting his head on his chest, as the vehicle sped toward the hospital. The boy stirred slightly, his fingers brushing against the dog's fur. At the hospital, doctors and nurses rushed the boy into the emergency room. The dog tried to follow but was stopped at the doors. He sat there, unmoving, his eyes fixed on the entrance. Hours passed. Nurses brought him water, and some stopped to pet him, but he refused to leave. His unwavering gaze stayed on the doors, waiting for his boy. Finally, a doctor came out. She knelt beside the dog and gently patted his head. "He's going to be okay," she said softly. The dog's tail thumped against the floor for the first time. Shortly after, the boy was wheeled out, his leg in a cast, but his face showing signs of recovery. When he saw the dog, his eyes welled with tears. "Buddy," he whispered, his voice faint. The dog leapt up, nuzzling the boy's face, his tail wagging furiously. The boy's parents, who had arrived earlier, were in awe as the paramedics explained what had happened. The dog had run miles, risking everything to stop the ambulance and bring help. His loyalty and instincts had saved the boy's life. Later, as the boy left the hospital with his dog by his side, the bond between them was stronger than ever. They didn't need words. Their connection was one of pure love and gratitude.